Hi, I'm Tess,
Hi, I'm Sarah, and we are.
the Happy Edit Sisters. Happiness isn't just being happy, it's an embodied feeling that starts with how we approach life, our actions, and our mindset. Everyone has a range of emotions, and that's a good thing.
Join us as we dive into what it means to be happy and how we build a foundation for happiness through different lenses. Hi, Tess.
Hi, Sarah.
So today we have another lovely guest on. So we've got Brian Jones coming on to speak with us today. So I've known Brian for about 4.5 years. We previously worked together in Liverpool. So Brian is an integrative therapist, training person-centered, CBT, and solution-focused. And he's spent 6 years working as a therapist and now works in private practice as well. Brian's also worked for the NHS and in mental health for 13 years and specialises working with both adult and children with ADHD. Brian's one of the co-founders and co-hosts of the Therapy Shed podcast as well, which is an amazing podcast that he does with Mark Dawson. So yeah, over to you, Brian, if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hello, thanks for the introduction.
It's okay.
Yeah. 4.5 years, that's a long time, hasn't it, that we've known each other now?
I know, it's flown by.
It has. I think basically what you just said, I'm an integrative therapist. I am in private practice. Prior to that, we worked together for an organisation where I was a therapist there, working with mainly young people. Prior to that, worked in the NHS, acute mental health, and also I spent some time working in addiction services, specifically sort of alcohol addiction. And then I moved into private practice, which I've been doing now for the last couple of years, really enjoying it. I'm also a clinical supervisor now, so I supervise other counsellors and therapists. And yes, me and Mark do a podcast, the Therapy Shed podcast, which we've been doing now for about 18 months maybe, where we talk about all things therapy, mental health, well-being, and sort of trying to make therapy more accessible to people who maybe have thought therapy wasn't for them. So that's a little bit about myself. Do you need me to add any more, or is that okay?
I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much. So one of the first things that we like to ask our guests is, what does happiness mean to you? So our whole podcast is about happiness. So what does it mean to you?
Ooh, what does it mean to me? I think when I think about happiness, because obviously I knew I was coming on the podcast today, so I was thinking about it over the last couple of days, and I think the surface level happiness, where just day to day, doing things that make me feel happy, but then there's almost a deeper happiness which then feels more like a cocktail of sort of balance, contentment, fulfillment. I've been going quite deep on it the last couple of days, really thinking about happiness and what it actually means. And I keep going from day-to-day happiness to really sort of what I would consider sort of a deeper understanding of happiness. And as I said, that cocktail of balance, contentment, fulfillment, they're all the things for me now that I like to think what happiness is.
Brilliant.
And can you go into that a little bit deep? Sorry.
No, go ahead, Tess.
I love these conversations with like three people, because it's like one person's like, oh yes, oh my God, oh.
You need a little talking stick.
We do like little hand raising on Zoom call. No, I like it this way. It's much more natural.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you go into that a little bit more? Like, what specific things, like, would you in your day-to-day, like you're saying, like this balance, so what does that mean to you?
So I think day to day for me, when I think about balance, it's sort of work-life balance. So am I working too much? Or obviously recently over 12 months now, being in private practice, where I have more control over the hours of work and things like that, which I've noticed makes me feel happier because I feel there's more of a balance there where I'm able to take the dog out for a walk, for example. So while I'm walking the dog, I'm feeling happy, I'm enjoying the scenery and just sort of, it's a part of my day where there's no stress, there's no worry, there's no nothing. I can just be very present, walking the dog, and that's it. And it's those type of things that make me feel happy. Or, during my working day, if I've got a spare hour, I can just go and get a coffee somewhere and I'm not worrying about having to get back to work or whatever it may be. I'm managing that time, which offers me the balance that, for me, allows me to feel happier, maybe.
Definitely. I love that idea of balance, Ryan. And, that's something that me and Tess talk about quite a lot. And I think as therapists as well, we talk about, don't we, about having that balance in our lives. And, we all live quite busy lives, don't we? Or, I think I said quite before, and Tess has been like, do you mean Barry? And, just kind of having that balance and noticing what brings happiness and noticing what doesn't, and being able to bring a little bit more of that in.
Definitely, because I think with balance, and again, you can probably tell I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, is thinking about unhappiness and sadness. And I think without being unhappy at times and having sadness at times, we wouldn't have a happiness. So again, it's that right balance between being happy and unhappy. And I don't think necessarily being unhappy at times is a bad thing, because then that allows us to work towards happiness or notice when we are happy. And I often think of and I don't know if this is the exact sort of explanation of it, but the sort of yin and yang of, without darkness you can't have light, and without light you can't have darkness, and things like that. So again, for me, that all equals balance.
I love that. And it's so important, right? And this is something that we talk about, Sarah and I have talked about before, and then also just like something that I do with my clients as well, is looking at that life is a range of different emotions, and that is incredibly important, from like the aspect of, as you say, just seeing, okay, like there's good times, there's bad times. It kind of makes it shine. It's like when you live in a rainy place, which I think we all can identify with. Maybe it's different countries, but we all live in a rainy place, and it's, the days when it's sunny out, like everything shines a little bit more. The green is a bit greener, and you really appreciate those moments. So it's noticing that, but it's also noticing that it's okay to have those down times. It's okay to, as you say, like we learn from those down times. We learn from the quote unquote mistakes or the difficult times. And maybe we actually learn from them sometimes a bit more because we focus on them a little bit more. And it's not a bad thing to have those, so that we can, as you say, progress towards things that do make us maybe a little bit more happier in our day to day.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you sometimes, when you were saying that, then because you mentioned the rain, it's a bit like when you see on, the TV sometimes, where somebody might live in a country where it never ever rains, and then they come somewhere where it's raining, they're sort of dancing in the rain because they've never experienced it before. So therefore, I think the balance isn't there, where someone who lives in a country where it's always raining would want to go somewhere where it was really warm and it never rains. But actually, you need both.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, like plants, if you just give them lots and lots of rain, they're going to flood. They're not going to get the nutrients that they need from the sun. And if you just give them sun, they're going to dry up. And we're plants as well.
I had this image of myself then, like, just being flooded with all this water, and then when the sun comes, just being like, oh, that's so nice.
Definitely, that is kind of the image I was going for. So I'm glad it carried over.
Ryan, it's really interesting to hear you say about, over the last few days, knowing that you're coming onto this podcast, that happiness is something that you've been thinking about. Do you feel that your perception of happiness has changed over the years?
My perception of happiness, I would definitely say my almost pursuit of happiness has changed. As in, maybe when I was younger, it was maybe, for example, I don't know, oh, you've got to get the right job, or you've got to earn so much money, or you've got to be doing this, that'll make me happy. And then sort of realising that actually, and again, I know this is probably because of the work that I do, that happiness is not found externally, it's internally. And I often work with clients when we're talking about if they're feeling lost or they're talking about feeling unhappy. And I always give the analogy of, the person who goes, oh, and this could start from very young. When I go to university, I'll be happy. And they go to university and then they might be happy for a little bit. And then it's when I get the job, when I get the promotion, when I get the relationship, when I get the house, when I get, when I retire, and they go through life always thinking the next thing is what's going to make them happy, or they have to achieve the next thing before they reach happiness. Where actually you can go through your life, get to retirement, and then all of a sudden you realise, oh, this hasn't made me happy. Where what would have made you happy in the first place was, internally, how you're sort of perceiving the situation you're in, the life that you have, and the experiences that you're experiencing in those moments, in like the here and now.
Definitely. And it's, we've had Mark on the podcast as well. And he was saying something very similar, that,
Okay.
that pursuit of kind of, he didn't use the word pursuit, but, that pursuit of happiness and kind of, when I reach this goal, that's going to make me happy. And yeah, and me and Tess talk about that all the time as well, kind of the importance of being in the moment and being in the now. And then and now you're bringing in that, that internal part of you, that not, I suppose in my head, it made me think about, that validation that we often seek from other people. Actually, that needs to come from within, doesn't it? Really does.
100%. I think, again, in therapy, we talk a lot, don't we, about sort of self-care, being kind to yourself, self-love, all of those things. And I think it's for those reasons around, if we can validate what we're doing and our experiences, then we're not seeking it from external factors or other people or other things. We're able to enjoy the perception of whatever it is that we're doing in that moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, it's funny, and I thought about this before, because Sarah's like, yeah, we talk about this a lot, and it's true, we do talk about it a lot. And I think, like, in some aspects, like, because we talk about it so much, we think that this is an obvious thing, right? Like, everyone should be thinking about this. Why are we talking about it again? But then you talk about it with someone like that comes to you like one-on-one, and they're like, oh, I've never thought of it that way, or like, you're just chatting, people just coming up to me, like telling me about, like, oh, I've listened to the podcast, oh, I really liked what you talked about, like really focusing in the moment, like I forget to do that. And it's a good reminder, like maybe they knew it, but they need that reminder of like, oh yes, it comes from within, right? This is an internal conversation that you're having with yourself. And it's good to have these reminders, because it's so easy to get caught up in that next thing, right? As you say, like, oh, make enough money, or get that next promotion that you want, or so you can do these things when you're retired. Not actually, I can do those things now, right? Like I can take that time to enjoy myself now. I don't have to just enjoy myself when I'm retired, especially for our generation, which that retirement age is getting a little bit higher.
Yeah,
definitely. Even like as we're talking, it reminds me as well, of I need to be more in the moment. I need to be, change that focus. So, every time that we have those conversations and obviously speaking to guests like yourself, Brian, as well, it kind of makes us go, oh yeah, I need to remember to do a bit more of that as well. And I don't know about yourself, Brian and Tess, when you're speaking with clients and we say something and then we might go, oh yeah, I need to do that too,
Definitely. I mean, we're all only humans at the end of the day, aren't we? And although we know all of these things are really good for us and really helpful, and we build them into our sort of routines, but sometimes we do get caught up in life, in the busyness of life. And I do have to remind myself. I know people listening won't be able to see it, but I can just show you. I have a clock that just has now on. I don't know if you can see that.
That is so good. I want one of them.
It actually doesn't work, but that doesn't matter because it's just got now on every number. And that just reminds me, because this is my working environment. I'm in here every day. So that always reminds me, just seeing the words now going around the clock reminds me that actually the only thing that is important is right now, what's happening right now.
Oh, that's so good. So like part of what I do is I teach yoga and yoga therapy, and you know, so much of that is true within a practice of yoga as well, right? And it's like, whether it's you're doing asana, like that physical movement of yoga, like focusing on the now. So how is your body in this now, right? How am I moving? How is my, you know, are my shoulders stacked over my hips? Or am I leaning forward? Am I slunching in my back? Am I pressing into the four corners of my feet, really activating my legs, for example, like in like Warrior One, right? Or when you're breathing, like instead of just like being somewhere else, like really focusing on the breath work that you're doing, your meditation, all of those things. And each of these things, it's a practice, right? It's not like it's an easy thing for anyone to do. Like I still struggle with these things too. Sometimes my head is all over the place. Lots of times my head is all over the place. And it's good to remember, you know, it's a practice, and it's a thing that like you just keep coming back to. And the more you do it, yes, the easier it is, but there's different seasons in your life where it's going to be more difficult because of whatever is going on. And it's just coming back into that moment and saying, okay, that's fine. Like I have these range of emotions, as we were talking about earlier, and that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be good. It's okay to experience these different things. And no matter what you're doing, always just remembering that you can come back to this practice of grounding, of awareness, of now. I love that clock. I'm gonna make one. I'm gonna make one.
She really will.
I really will. It's next week. I'll send you the picture. It'll be there.
If it works, send me one.
I will. Brian, so obviously you kind of described that, the clock with the now written all around the clock. What other things do you think that you might do to support your own happiness?
I think a little bit what sort of what Tess was sort of saying, and what I was thinking. This is something that I talk to with clients about. A lot of people, you know, we've worked for organisations, or have things like monthly supervision or one-to-ones or appraisals or whatever they might call them, where basically your manager will sit down with you and tell you hopefully everything that you're doing well and give you praise for that, and also maybe point out some of the things that you're not doing too well, and look at maybe set yourself some goals, targets to work towards, to try and improve that. And they do that each month. Well, they should. If you know, a good organisation would do that each month, because it helps with sort of productivity, and it helps with you know, making the business run as smoothly as possible. But we never really do that in our own personal lives, where, you know, once a month we sit down and maybe go through, okay, what's going good in my life at the moment? What are good things? And it could be relationships with others, and you know, I'm spending enough time with my partner, for example, and are we doing things together? Or it might be, well, we've been super busy this month and we've not really made time for each other because of work, for example. So my goal for this month is to maybe focus more on that. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is, I think we tend to get caught up in life and that autopilot where we're just sort of going through life, and it's not until a crisis happens or we hit that brick wall that we think, oh, actually, you know, I should have been doing more of this, or I should have been doing more of that. So I think the answer to the question is, for me, sort of having those regular check-ins with myself, where I can just take myself somewhere, sit down and just reflect on how the last couple of weeks have been going, what's going well, not just focusing on the negatives, acknowledging the positives as well, and being appreciative of them, and, you know, sometimes giving myself a tap on the back for doing things well, but also not ignoring the negatives and burying my head in the sand and saying, okay, you know, I need to focus on this month. I need to think about what I can do to improve this area of my life.
Definitely. Is that something that you would do like within your supervision, or is that something that you would kind of take a step back and kind of, you know, how would you do that?
I would do that on myself, by myself. I mean, I might in supervision, it might come up and we might have a conversation about it, but generally that's just something I personally do for myself, where I'll just, again, I have once a month, I go to my favourite sort of, coffee shop, I'll get myself a coffee, sit down and just spend, half an hour. It doesn't have to be an exercise, you're sitting there for hours going over things, just a little check-in with myself, a little reflection, a little sort of acknowledgement of, again, not just the good or the bad, the both, for the balance.
I really like that. I try to do that. Notice the word try. I try to do that once a week at the beginning of my weeks. Because like you, I also work for myself. So it's like I do it on like a business side, but I also do it on a personal, like I try to do both. Usually it only, I'm going to be honest here. Often the focus ends up being more on the business side of things, what's working, what's not working. But I do try to do that as well, because it is so important. Like, okay, what is going well? What can I do more of? And even on a day-to-day basis, just like in the shower, when you're like, when I'm taking my morning shower, like asking myself, okay, how am I doing? Is there something that I can give back to myself just a little bit today? I actually call it my 10-minute method, because it's like, it's this little method that I try to do with myself, and I'm not always perfect at it, but like, it's, just taking that little bit of time. I like though that you're saying, okay, once a month, like spending like a proper half an hour on just yourself. Like I think I'm going to try to incorporate that, because it's just so beautiful of like really just sitting down and like maybe journaling about it. Or, I mean, I don't know how you do it. But I could see myself like journaling about it. Okay, so this is what's working. This was what isn't. And this is what I can do a little bit more of to support myself.
Yeah. I mean, I do try and make it almost, because again, thinking about, places I've worked in the past where we've done, sort of like supervision one-to-ones where it is sort of documented, and so then there's sort of evidence, or you're holding yourself accountable to it. So I don't write it down as such. I'll just use my laptop and put some notes in and things like that. And then the next month I delete the previous month and then just start again. So I just have that. It's almost like a rolling sort of document that I have that I use. And it's only very simple. It's not like, massively detailed, just a few little prompts and notes for me to just remind myself, but I feel accountable to it then. So I'm more likely to follow it through rather than, I forgot about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I really like that word accountable, because we are accountable, aren't we, for our own happiness? I know that things happen in life that are unexpected. People go through lots and lots of trauma, and I know that we all work with clients that have experienced trauma and difficulties in life. But we are accountable, aren't we, for making those changes? And obviously seeking help as well, because seeking help is really important, and having that support. Yeah, I love that kind of idea of being accountable, Brian.
I think as well with therapy, a massive part of therapy, probably the main part of therapy, is empowering people to choose to make the changes that they need to make. And obviously sometimes people need help and support with that, of course, and that's what sort of therapy offers. But ultimately, the person has got to come to their own conclusions themselves, and then they've got to make the changes themselves. Even someone could come to therapy for years and years and be getting told this is what you need to do. If it was CBT, or solution focused type therapy, which is, if you do this and this, it'll help. But if the client's not able to go away and implement them things, then it's not going to help.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I see too when I work with people, is that it needs to be something really, really small, really manageable, that they can start creating themselves accountable for it, but also just they can do it, and they don't feel overwhelmed by it, so like if you were to show up, like and then like a one-on-one case for like yoga therapy, for example, if I were to give someone like this huge, like, oh, so I want you to do this huge movement sequence every day, plus this amount of breath work, plus this meditation, plus this, that, like people would be like, and then they wouldn't do any of it. So it's just giving them that one little thing of like, okay, so, as you say, like, can you just sit down with yourself for 30 minutes and ask yourself like these questions and see what comes from that, right? Just do one thing. And like little by little, can you start making it a routine? Can you maybe put it on something else and make it sort of habit stacking? Something that they can really make themselves feel accountable. to do it, but then also feel empowered. I like that word that you use, feel empowered, because they are checking in with themselves. They're doing this for themselves, right? As you say, like happiness is very much an internal thing. It's not an external thing. So we can, guide people, but we can't do it for them. They have to be the ones that step up and make those things. So if we can make it manageable, accessible, then they're more likely to do it, and they feel better about themselves because they are doing it.
Definitely. And even if the person can't get themselves to sit down and maybe journal things, or do things that feel a little bit too much, something that is, some people find a real challenge, but is one of the probably first things that I'll suggest to people, depending on what it is that they've come for, but in general, is you spoke before, Tess, about when you're in the shower, is at the end of your shower, it sounds really uncomfortable, and it is, but putting it on cold and trying to have 30 seconds to a minute of a cold shower, it's challenge, it's uncomfortable, it's meant to be, but actually you will feel great after it, and it's something that's achievable.
I do that. I love it. I love the tingling feeling after. Like, and I feel warmer. It's weird. Like, because at the moment you're like, oh my God, this is so cold. And then as soon as you turn off that water, you're like, oh, I actually feel really good. I love that. Yes. Share that.
and that's probably because, like, the research shows now that they say it increases dopamine by like 17% or something like that. So again, talking about happiness and the chemicals in our body and things like that, cold water therapy, the research is showing that it increases dopamine and it decreases cortisol, which is obviously the stress hormone. So, I can guarantee for anyone listening, if you've never tried it before, try a cold shower. It's uncomfortable. It's meant to be. But afterwards, I can guarantee you will probably feel, even if it's only for 30 seconds, but you will feel good after it.
Definitely. It's becoming a lot more popular, isn't it, as well, kind of cold water swimming, people having, like, doing the ice bath things and stuff like that. So it's definitely something, there's an awareness there of it now, isn't there, which is great.
Yeah, definitely.
You've already, sorry, Tess, you go ahead.
No, you go.
You've already kind of touched on kind of work and things like that. And how do you integrate happiness into your work?
It's a tough question. How do I integrate happiness into my work? I think getting the balance, again, it comes back to, for me, it's all about balance. I think the type of work that we do, obviously we can often be working with people who are really struggling in life, and it can feel quite sort of, the word that's coming to me is dark at times with some of the work that we do. So it's important for me to make sure that I have things in place, sort of in between clients, for example, that I always try and leave half an hour gaps in between each client that I see. So in that half an hour, depending on the type of work I've been doing, there'll be things that I do. And that could just be putting a song on, or even playing a game on my phone, or reading a book, or it could just be, probably the thing I like to do the best is just to sit there and do nothing at all. And I don't think of nothing. I'm just sitting there for sort of 5-10 minutes. So they're the type of things I would do during my working day. But at the end of the day, again, the likes of a shower, sort of, if I've had a particularly difficult day, I may go and get a shower. And while I'm in the shower, I'm almost imagining that everything's just being washed away. It's almost like a cleanse type of thing. And I know that can sound a bit whatever, but it doesn't feel as deep as that. I just sort of picture sort of everything just being washed away, and I always feel better after it.
I love that. And so you talk about dark times, and your clients going through them. When you've gone through your own dark times, we all have them in our lives. Like, is there something that has helped you in those times? Would it just, like your shower, like that's such a beautiful thing, just like allowing it just to wash off you physically, mentally, is there anything else that, like, in those dark times that you've noticed that you've brought into your life that have really benefited you?
Going to therapy, going to speak to someone about it. I think that's a massive part of that helps me. I mean, I'm lucky now because of the job I do. I have my own supervision, which can be sort of almost like therapy. It's very close to therapy because you're working with another therapist, talking about sort of struggles and problems that you may have. But then certain times, you know, for me, it's quite a normal thing to dip in and out of therapy and counselling if I'm struggling with certain aspects of my life. I think that's a really healthy thing to do. Being around family and friends, you know, I'm feeling comfortable enough to be able to talk about things and just open up and feel safe to do that. And just, I suppose now being able to just stop. I think that's a massive thing. Just stop. And we spoke about like the here and now and being very present. Almost just being able to literally stop. So if I'm taking the dog for a walk and I can just stop and just stand there and just, I don't know, think about things, reflect. I think reflecting is a massive part. And a lot of this is stuff that I've learned through, you know, training to be a therapist and then working in that field, is that we learn all of these things that we suggest for clients to try. So it's important that for me that I practice what I preach. Otherwise, you know, I personally don't think clients, if I'm not doing the things that I'm encouraging my clients to do, if they can, I think they'd sort of almost pick up that I'm not doing it. So then they wouldn't take me serious. So like the cold showers, I have a cold shower every morning because I know it helps. So when I'm suggesting it to a client and like they normally look at me in horror because I'm telling them to get a cold shower, I'll explain to them my experience of it and how I find it, and you know, for them to at least try it and just see how they find it.
That sounds amazing, and it's great to hear, and to, you know, kind of accessing that support, you know, when we need it and noticing when we need that help as well. And I love the idea of kind of, you know, when we're in the room with a client and we kind of going, you know, maybe try this might be really helpful. And the client looks at us and goes like, really? And you're like, yeah, I've done it.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think when clients come in, you know, to the space, they're often sort of very hyper aware and hypersensitive, so they're picking up on things. And I think if you're not being genuine, a lot of clients can pick up on that, and they know.
Yeah, definitely. Brian, if there was advice that you would give your younger self, what might it be?
Advice to my younger self. I done an exercise once when I was training to be a counsellor, and it was an exercise where we got in touch with we were doing lots of inner child work and going back to our inner child, and we done this exercise, and it was so powerful at the time. And we had to write a letter to our younger self, and with our non-dominant hands, and so my handwriting's horrendous anyway. So it literally looked like a 3-year-old had written it, which was part of the point. And then we done this sort of meditation where it was really strange. It was almost, I can't even explain it, even thinking about it now. But basically, this meditation and this image was me standing there as I was then, talking to myself when I was about 12 or 13. And the advice that I was giving myself was at the time was, don't worry, everything's fine. Don't put any pressure on yourself. Just, you know, you'll be okay. So I suppose, and that's always stuck with me.
Yeah. So
I think it'd be the same.
Yeah. So taking that expectation off.
Yeah. And the pressure, just, yeah, I don't know. I think especially even I see it now with my son who's 17, and there's a lot of pressure, isn't it, on sort of that we put on people, younger people, and you know, you've got to know what you want to do when you're older, and you've got to work super hard, and you know, if you're doing like your exams, you've got, and there's a lot of pressure there, isn't there, where actually, I don't know.
Definitely. And it kind of reminded me of what you were saying before as well, of that internal part of you, if you know, it's going to be okay, you know, to take that pressure off. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And it's trusting.
Yeah. Even if it's not okay, it's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's okay not to be okay, isn't it? You know, that's something we say quite a lot.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's that moment of when you kind of look at it, go like, I've made it here, you know, like, so we've all gone through our dark moments and we're still here. And so it's like, okay, no, like, you're going to be fine because you were fine before. Right. And you made it through that. You've processed through that. You've grown. Right. And it's so, I mean, it is easier to say that looking back, right? Like when you talk to like younger people, they're like, oh my God, you know, I totally remember those moments of being like, oh my God, I got a B plus. I didn't get an A. I'm never going to get into university, you know? And it's just like, obviously that didn't happen, you know, like that wasn't that big of a deal. But at the time, it was a huge deal for me. You know, and if I had someone that came to me and said, like, don't worry, it's going to be okay, I think part of you would be like, you don't understand, you know. But then maybe that just that guiding into it of like, as you say, like going back to your younger self, having that inner child work, and we can do this at a lot of different ages, right? We don't have to be adults doing this. Like you could be a teenager and doing that, like your much younger self. I love the idea of writing it with your non-dominant hand. That's so good. And then, you know, like, yeah, look at all this things that I have already gone through, you know, what I've processed, what I've learned, and I'm here now. So I can do it. I can continue to do it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And normalizing those feelings as well. That's really important. You know, just kind of going, it's okay to feel like that. You know, we've kind of spoke, haven't we, like throughout this episode of emotions and you know, of just feeling that.
I think that's the big one, isn't it, Sarah, around sort of normalizing that it's normal to feel, you know, whatever you're feeling in that moment is probably the right way to be feeling. It might be uncomfortable, you might not like how it feels, but actually that's exactly how it should feel.
Yeah. And going back to kind of, you know, in that cold shower, using that like analogy a little bit of, okay, it's going to feel really uncomfortable to sit in these uncomfortable emotions, but actually, you know, by sitting with that feeling can be so powerful, you know, and can lead to some really amazing things in life as well.
Definitely. And we know this, don't we, as therapists, that, you know, the best thing for a person to do is sit in that uncomfortableness, you know, not for too long, but sit in it and be okay in sitting in that uncomfortableness. And I think once people are able to do that, like you've just said, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my supervisor about being able to sit with that feeling, and yet he agreed, and then he went, and then we have to go, what am I going to do with this now? So it's about then going, but I've sat with this, I'm looking at it, I'm recognizing it, I'm accepting it. What am I going to do next?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
And I think that it's what you mentioned before of like getting support, right? And that there's these moments that, especially depending on what that like strong emotion might be, you know, having someone there to help you as well. Like, because sometimes it's, you know, you don't feel comfortable standing there alone in that. So feeling like you have that support system next to you that you can rely on is incredibly helpful, and it helps you take that next step. And then it also helps you when you kind of go, oh, what is that next step, right? And kind of, you know, helps guide you to find it.
Yeah, definitely that. And obviously the idea of therapy again is it's, you know, when you go to see a therapist, that they're able to be subjective about the situation, so they're able to maybe see it in a slightly different way or help you understand it in a slightly different way, which then just helps shift that sort of perspective that you have or that view or feeling you have, to be able to go, right, okay, yeah, that makes sense now, or okay, yeah, I understand that now, or yeah, I accept it, you know, it is what it is, and I have to sort of work through that now.
Yeah,
it's that lovely word, isn't it? Reframing. I love that word. I love it. It's a really cheesy word, but I love it.
It's great, and you can use it for anything almost, can't you? You know,
definitely. No, that reframing is huge. And like in also like just kind of noticing for more on a physical aspect, right? And not just a mental one, but you can also reframe from a physical point of view, you know, like you're feeling all these emotions, but then you can also like notice, like I'm here, I'm sat here, I'm in a safe space. like I maybe I'm feeling those emotions, really tight emotions in my chest. Where in my other part of my body do I not feel that? Right. And just kind of going back and forth in between, and then like talking, you know, creating that reframing from a physical aspect as well. Like, okay, I'm safe. I can, you know, process this in a safe space. I don't have to be super tight. I can start to release those things. And then because you're releasing that physically, then you're able to think more clearly too of like what that next step can be.
Mm-hmm. No, I often will talk to clients for, like, say, I don't know, for example, if they're suffering with anxiety, and reframing that in a way of, actually that can be a good thing, because that's your brain's telling your body that it's working, it's recognizing danger, or it's trying to recognize danger. So okay, it may be misinterpreting it, but actually it's a good thing that you're feeling anxious, because without anxiety, for example, with zero anxiety, you wouldn't look when you're crossing the road. You just cross the road without thinking about it. So actually having a little bit of anxiety is a good thing.
Definitely.
So reframing it in that way, rather than it being, oh my God, I've got anxiety, like, oh, like there's something wrong with me, you know, why have I got this anxiety? It's like, well, actually, everybody has anxiety. It's a normal human emotion. Yes, for some people it gets a little bit out of control, or it can be exacerbated by certain things, and that has to be looked at how to manage that. But actually, it's okay to be anxious. It's normal. It's a good thing. It keeps us safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, looking at that anxiety in a different way and kind of reframing that anxiety, it can be really, really powerful, can't it, for somebody? You know, I know that, you know, in narrative therapy would kind of like completely take that away from that person and see it as like something separate from that person, which can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. It is.
So at the end of every episode, we like to offer our listeners a happy edit tool, we like to call it. Something small that they can bring into their life, maybe that week or this week that they're listening to it, or at any point, that is just a little edit that, you know, something that they can see how it works for them to see if it builds a little bit more happiness into their life. Is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners?
I don't know why, but the first thing that comes to my mind is, I don't know if you've read the book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Have you?
No.
No.
Oh my God! You need to read it. It's the most kindest book that you've ever read. It's amazing. It's just, yeah. For anybody listening who's not read it, you need to go and read it, including yourselves.
I will look it up, and I'll make sure they put
Definitely
a link to it in the show notes as well for anyone that's looking into it.
It's just, the only way I can describe it is, it's such a kind book. It's just the whole book is about kindness. That's the only way I can sort of describe it. And I think for me, being kind to yourself and being kind to others is ultimately what can make you feel happy.
That's such a lovely kind of little offering into for people to kind of go and have a little bit of a look at that book. And yeah, I love the idea of bringing kindness.
Yeah, and maybe a cold shower.
Both together. I'm sure there's a water, you know, like you can get some sort of water resistant cover for the book, right? Read it while you're in the cold shower.
That definitely sounds like a challenge.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been amazing. And if the listeners, you know, if they want to connect with you more, how can they find you?
I'd probably say go and check the podcast out. Go and check the Therapy Shed podcast out. I have a website, brianjonescounselling.com. If anyone wants to get in contact with me around the therapy side or supervision. Yeah, I'm not really massive on sort of social media and stuff like that. I don't really use it very much. So yeah, I'd probably say the podcast. Go and give the podcast a listen. There's some good episodes on there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Brian. It's been so lovely speaking with you today. I'm so glad. Again. Yeah, I'm so glad you've been able to be part of this. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah, it has. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. At the Happy Edit podcast, we're mindful that the podcast is not in replacement of therapy. If you do need further support, please do contact us on our contact details in the show notes. And we're more than happy to offer further support and guidance and direct you to places like the counselling directory or therapy directories. If you do also need further support, we would also recommend you contacting your primary healthcare provider. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you all soon.